Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Political Review. It is our first live show in a few weeks, and we're very, very excited to be back. My name is Quincy Parker, and I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, who is, he'll be in just a moment. You know him as, well, I'll let him introduce himself. Today is going to be an interesting day. We're excited about our guest today. We have from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Minister, the Honorable Darren Henfield, with us. We're going to speak with the good minister about his constituency first. He's a member of Parliament for North Abaco, and this general moment in our nation's progress and history speaks to the passage of a year since Hurricane Dorian, an unprecedented storm, wreaked havoc on the island of Abaco and the island of Grand Bahama, wrought devastation in its wake in the center of Abaco, and raised for all of us as Bahamians a number of questions about how we do what it is we do. The minister and I were talking just before we came on air about politics in a time of crisis, and that's where we are. We are at this present moment in the midst of recovering from a crisis of epic proportions with Hurricane Dorian. We now also have to contend with a global pandemic in the guise of the COVID-19 virus, which people around me, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands have fallen ill. The numbers are staggering when you think of what the world is going through and dealing with respect to COVID-19. And so we'll have to have that discussion with the good minister as well. But before we go any further, I wanted to give my co-host a chance to say hi and tell the people that all is well. Adrian, you there? That Adrian will chime in as soon as we get those technical difficulties figured out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence with us today. I would like to introduce and say hello to the Honorable Darren Henfield. Mr. Henfield, welcome to the Political Review.
Good afternoon, Quincy. Good afternoon, Adrian and Bahamas. It's a pleasure to be joining you this afternoon. Thanks for inviting us.
Minister, the obvious question has to be asked first, and that is, given that you're the Member of Parliament for North Abaco, how is North Abaco faring at the present moment?
That question, in a word, I've learned to answer this way. In North Abaco, it's been progressive. As you've heard the Prime Minister say the other night during a press briefing, a press statement, as you've heard me say over and repeatedly, we have come a tremendously long way since September 1st, 2019, when the most catastrophic weather event in the recent history of these storms have walked ashore in central Abaco and worked its way north, not sparing anything in its path. The sheer debris field was some 3 million cubic yards, and to imagine having to clean up and work through such a large field of debris alone is a feat to see what we've been able to do. But we still have a long way to go, and so I'm very tempered when I say we have done well. We've done extremely well. We've shown resilience in Abaco and in Grand Bahama. but we still have much more work to be done.
There is a challenge that some folks have with the time frame and the timeline. Right? People don't often recall from evidence elsewhere in the world how long it can take to recover from a storm of this magnitude. Right? I mean, there are still parts of New Orleans that are dealing with the aftermath of Katrina, which was 10, 11 years ago, something like that. There are still bits and pieces of Puerto Rico dealing with Maria, I believe it was the name of the storm.
Yeah.
And so a year on, for as much progress as I think we've made, I think we've done, I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, but I think that the progress that is made let's use a neutral word and say is acceptable. The problem is in politics, of course, nothing is acceptable unless it's perfection. Before you go on, Minister, I just want to make sure Adrian is with us. Adrian, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let me say good afternoon also to the Minister Henfield and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who he guide, I guess, with whatever kind of hands he can guide them during these kind of times. Minister Henfield, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. Can you speak up a bit? You're kind of low.
Yeah, what happened? Quincy didn't pass me through right, Darren, so I got to do as best I can.
Well, I know you, Adrian. I know you will adapt and adjust it and make the necessary things to do to be heard here today. It's good to see you.
What did I do?
How's it going? It's a beautiful island shirt you got on today. You look like today.
I am an island boy. I was born in Abaco, raised there. Went to primary school and high school there. Left home in 1981 to join the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and I sometimes consider myself maybe sadomasochistic because I came from the military all my life and jumped head first right into politics, receiving the nomination from my party in January 2017. And here we are. But I'm an island boy.
I saw your father's church, man. I was by your father's church just a few weeks ago, and I was over at Silver Mill, and your father's church is right on the corner.
Grace Baptist Church.
So I saw your father's church just several weeks ago in Abaco, so I was there to try to make my own assessment of all that is happening. It's 1 year later. Quincy Barker, good evening to you. How's everybody, Quincy?
Everyone is good, thanks, Adrian. We
Quincy, this is a very interesting time, and Quincy, for the House Ministers of the Cabinet speak to the country based on where we are right now. I'm sure you would have laid a foundation for the conversation, but for the most part, we are at such critical period here in our country to get answers and to have ministers actually speak to the country about where we are in the spirit of sobriety. It's almost scary sometimes to go outside and look at the reality of the New Bahamas.
Yeah, and Minister, I think that's one of the points that I want to take up with you is, yes, you've had a year of recovery efforts, complicated by COVID-19, which we'll get to, but the state of affairs as it presently exists, when you look at, and social media is a strange creature, obviously, because negative emotions and negative comments get much more, I mean, this is statistically proven, they get much more play than anything positive in social media. But even given that, factoring for that bias, there's still a sense that I get when I look at social media, specifically from Abaco, when I'm on the ground in Abaco with the people who are doing the work, given my day job. You run into people who still feel like that not enough has been done. Now, you can't please all the people. You can't satisfy everyone. And I don't know that you should try. So what I want to ask you is how you are assessing the state of affairs in Abaco now. What metric are you using to tell yourself and your constituents and our listeners today what level of satisfaction you have with the recovery efforts?
You know, Quincy, it's a very good question. You know, we all have our biases. And in this day, this modern era of informal media, everyone has a ready soapbox to stand upon and to speak their piece. We encourage that in a democratic society. We only ask that people do it responsibly. Some of us have been irresponsible in our approach in the way that we use social media and other such mediums to communicate our messages. I look at the empirical data. If you were in Abaco on the 1st or immediately after the 1st of September and you saw what we realized happened in Abaco, we would all appreciate that Abaco has come a tremendously long way. And I say that, but I also say this, we still have some more to do. When people are undone anywhere in my community, you know, I said to them in a memorial service last week Tuesday, I said, you know, I go to bed with you on my mind. I wake up in the mornings with you on my mind and thinking about how we can better our circumstances in Abaco. People, it's human nature that we have somewhere to displace our frustrations, our hurts, and our trauma. We lost a lot of homes, we lost a lot of lives, and I want to take this opportunity to again say to those who've lost loved ones, as I have in my family, my sincere condolences to you. This is a particularly painful time and period that we're going through, having to recall and relive those emotions that we felt in the moment. And so I understand the hurt. I appreciate the experience of having lost everything and having to recover from scratch. But I know that we are a resilient people. I know that we are a faithful people. I know that we will get this done if we do it together. But you indicated something a little earlier. You know, politics can be quite divisive in the Bahamas, as it is all over the world, as we're seeing as we look right to the north of us and see things unfold. But you know, the only way we're going to recover and bring Abaco back to its former self, where we contributed arguably the second largest amount of economy to the Bahamian people and the government, the treasury. We're gonna have to do it together. We had a lot of help coming here at one point, as we had as much as 1,400 NGOs in Abaco. We were blessed. What I started doing as foreign minister when assuming office, and I'll stop right now to let you get your questions in, is we started signaling ahead of time, requesting assistance through dip notes, because I realized as a military officer, sometimes things can go so wrong that you have to have contingencies in place. And so we would say to our friends in the North, the Americans, to the United Kingdom, and to all of our fellow states that we are part of in the UN and CARICOM and elsewhere, we'd say, listen, we don't know what level of communications we're going to have following this thing. It looks like we're going to get a direct hit. And so we now grant you permission to come in and assist us as best you can. And we saw that around the 3rd of September 2019. It was a relief to hear U.S. assets coming into medevac critically injured and injured persons out of Abaco. I was so moved by that. I made my way over to the clinic and just thanked personally a young Coast Guardsman who was there trying to strap a critically injured person into a gurney. I just said to him, you know, son, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for what you're doing. Thanks for your service, you know. And so people have their views about the recovery efforts, but, you know, empirical data cannot be refuted. The DRA has spent nearly $30 million or $30 million between Abaco and Grand Bahama just cleaning up debris. More than $4.2 million, I believe it is, was spent on small home recovery efforts. There's a lot of more work to be done. We have to find the wherewithal and the will to continue to do it.
Adrian, I know you have some stuff, but I wanted to ask in terms of one of the questions that I get asked in my day job is for a timeline, and it's difficult to explain to frustrated individuals that a timeline for recovery or reconstruction or recovery efforts in the current atmosphere is a guess at best, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what resources you'll have to bring to bear on the issues. But I have to ask nonetheless, and this is your load to bear as the member of parliament and as a member of the government. What kind of timeline are we working with here in terms of an actual resumption of useful economic activity in Abaco? So that those displaced people might consider coming home.
Yeah, Quincy, you use examples of Puerto Rico. You use another example, the example of Mississippi, where entire wards were just discontinued and closed. I spoke with Michael Capone, who leads one of the NGOs working out of Abaco, and he said to me, we had some really bad fires in California, and the cleanup didn't begin until 5 months later. And so to put a timeline on the road to our complete recovery economically and commercially in Abaco, I think so many things depend on it. It would be foolish to do, but we have a long road ahead. This is not going to be a sprint, and I try to, as realistically as possible, say to my people when I see them, we just got to stay the course. Some of the issues that we see is the restoration of power. The utilities companies have been exceptionally good, even though they're homegrown. Batelco, not Batelco, but BPL. BPL, as you know, has restored, I'm advised, up to 80 to 85% of the power in Abaco. The Water and Sewers Corporation is doing a tremendous job. The government spent a lot of monies and trying to reestablish completely destroyed infrastructures in our utilities. Let me just contextualize this a bit for you. The storm came across off the Atlantic and across Elbow Key, which we call Hope Town, Manawa and Guana, and walked its way straight through central Abaco, just breaking a bit outside of Spring City, heading south, to allow us a little bit more leverage there in your power supplies and water and the rest of it. And then it worked its way further north, all the way through Treasure Key, and stopped outside of Blackwood, doing some damage there, and then going all the way further north, where we had a lot of water and wind damage. But this storm was replete with tornadoes. While in the government complex there in the EOC, you can literally feel the atmospheric pressure change in the building as these tornadoes just walk through the atrium. And thank God for the building that we had there. The government complex was turned into a makeshift shelter, as well as the government clinic in the eye of the storm, where people came from all four corners of Abaco, of central Abaco, seeking safety. We were able to just open up all of the buildings and allow people, all of the offices, to allow people to come in. And so, this is not going to be a sprint. This is going to be a long journey. I think in a year's time, we have come a tremendously long way, but we know that we still have a lot more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Minister, I hear you, and I believe, like most Bahamians, I know and understand the lament. I've been in Abaco several times since the hurricane. Just weeks after the hurricane, I've been into Abaco. I agree with you. I don't think anything as catastrophic as this in nature has ever happened to the Bahamas. We've never seen nothing like it. Nevertheless, I was kind of stunned at the progress made, and after taking a look at the numbers, I think we borrowed 120 million from the IDB to help with the reconstruction process. 30 million from my breakdown from the Ministry of Finance was supposed to go to 30 million was supposed to go to the restoration of electrical power. 15 million water and sewage. 30 million was supposed to go to cleanup efforts in Abaco and parts of Grand Bahama. And so when I look at the numbers, and I think part of my lament is whether or not Quincy talked about the effort being 1 year later. I have some convictions, some very strong convictions about Abaco that I've never had about any part of the Bahamas before in my life. I've been around this process from 1984, 1983, covering Chelgums and Caracoms and all the things of this nature. And this is the first time in my life I believe that an island of our country has given me a broken heart. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about Abaco in the context that the monies, you said 100 plus NGOs on the ground. There are so many places on the ground. And so after going through all of the numbers and spending time there, I'm still confused, and maybe you could help me with my confusion today. Quincy talked about a timeline. And how do you measure the progress made intricately by the government of the Bahamas to date, intricately touched by the government today?
I measure it by the amount of people that I see continuing to return home to Abaco on a daily basis. I also measure it by the amount of progress that I see on the ground physically. You have to realize that Dorian struck us in September. In December, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, the government decided to set up the Disaster Recovery Authority. Then comes March, and you know, all the Bahamians know when you hit December, you're coming into Junkanoo period and the rest of it. And you don't really begin to do what you have to do until about January, mid-January or so. Then you come into March and you're struck with COVID. COVID-19 came to us and exacerbated what we already saw as very difficult circumstances in Abaco. And so for that reason, it is very difficult for one to measure in a timeline the amount of progress that we have made in Abaco. I think we've done extraordinarily well given all of the circumstances. What we determined to do as a government was not to stop reconstruction in Abaco and in Grand Bahama, despite COVID. We made the order so that we could continue the construction because we knew that we had an impending hurricane season coming toward us, and we still had quite a bit of debris that could become missiles in the event that we were, God forbid, that we were struck again by another hurricane. And so, you know, not to make excuses, these are the realities. COVID, coupled with the destruction that we saw in Abaco and in Grand Bahama, makes it very difficult for us to move at the pace that we would like to see us moving at in Abaco. Of course, we had to redirect a lot of funding to social assistance for Bahamians, where we're spending, I think I've heard figures as much as 10 million a week, and feeding Bahamians through the feeding program that the government has undertaken. We have nearly, if not more than 50% of this country unemployed. NIB is spending a tremendous amount of money to try and keep families at least with food on the table and in some instances with a roof over their heads. And so we are in very, very difficult times, and these times call for strong leadership. I think we have been given a good, strong leadership. I think Bahamians appreciate now with COVID-19 that we are all in this fight together, that we have to keep our social distance.
You know, the platitudes, and I understand why you say what you say, and I never saw you as a politician. I loved you as a Defense Force officer because I think in that way, your conversation would have been much more directed as a soldier. But right now, you sound so much like a politician, man. It scares me.
Well, you know, when you're in Rome, Adrian, you got to do as the Romans do. But I'm trying to be honest. No, I'm trying to be honest. I'm trying to be honest with you. You have your view of things in Abaco, and I have my view of things in Abaco. You know.
So you were part of the team that decided that the dome should be built amidst all of the leaking roofs and all of the other things.
Abaco needed immediately some kind of housing. The government was displaced. The entire government in Abaco was displaced, which means that the police officers, immigration officers, people who work in the public service were all displaced. And we needed to get the government functioning again in Abaco. The domes may have been seen, in my mind, as a ready solution to get the government back to work and to bring back civil society in the way that we thought it ought to be in Abaco, given the circumstances that we faced. And so I hear the criticism about the domes, but people are living in them. There are 170 domes supposed to be established in Abaco. We're right now in Dundastown and Central Pines and in Murphytown erecting domes. Hopefully we'll be in Treasury very soon, and then points further north of there. And so they're serving their purpose.
So let me jump in here if I could.
Go ahead, Quincy.
Thanks. The displaced communities is something that I have a concern about in terms of people who, you know, they lost their homes, they lost their businesses, they lost for practical intents and purposes, the substance of their lives. They kept their life, thank God. And again, I want to echo the minister here, Adrian, and add our condolences to those families who lost loved ones during the storm. You know, we pray for you and we stand with you. But
thank you.
But it is given the infrastructural damage. What are you saying to those people who want to go home to Abaco, but they can't go home because, well, may not be enough domes or whatever the case may be. But how are you addressing the displaced community?
Okay, the government has indicated several times now that we have provided 2 60-acre lots for redevelopment of homes in Abaco, redevelopment really of communities. 1 60-acre lot just outside of Spring City, another one just outside of Wilson City. And we've also identified a plot of crown land between Dundastown, just south of Silbert Mills Church in Dundastown, all the way down to Murphytown, just south of the Patrick A. Bethel High School, which is I'm advised, 300 acres of land that should be available for development. And we hope through public-private partnerships, the DRA has put out RFPs on this, and I think they're just sorting through them now. There's also an opportunity to build 53 homes by Bakers Bay or Passerean, their holding company. It has committed to building 53 homes in Central Pines, which is a wonderfully developed community, which is a model community of development that will be given to Bahamians who've lost their homes gratis. And so we're very, very grateful for the gift. But we also know that it's going to take a lot of financing. The government has determined that we will put in the infrastructure in these developments. We will put in the utilities and everything else, and sell those lands to Bahamians at cost of putting in the infrastructure. So if there's 1,000 properties or $1,000 spent in 100 properties, you will pay your $100 for your property and begin to build your home or acquire your home. And so there's a housing solution that is long-term that we're very excited about. I think Abaco personally, for me, is on the verge of a construction boom. We're very optimistic about what the future holds. Even now, to get people in to do the rebuilding in Abaco is very difficult because there's no place for them to stay. But nonetheless, I get calls every day about people saying to me, listen, I'm trying to get back home. I need a generator. I need this or I need that. And we do all that we can to assist them. The other day, we repatriated more than 80 persons from Eleuthera. Just recently, several weeks ago, we repatriated more than 40 families from New Providence. But we still have people in places like Exuma, and other islands of the Bahamas. And we want them to come back home. And so we're working assiduously to ameliorate their circumstances to get them back home.
One of the questions that I have written down here is, how could the government have done better? I know that backseat driving, an armchair quarterbacking leaves you free to see the gaps in all manner of reactions and actions. But in terms of lessons learned, what are the big takeaway items? What lessons have you as an MP, as a minister, have the government learned from this, from dealing with this tragedy?
That's a very good question, and it's one I'm sure that militates the mind of the Prime Minister and most of us who sit in the cabinet and people like you who sit outside the cabinet in this country. Following Dorian, I had an opportunity to go to visit Abaco in my capacity as Foreign Minister, with Secretary Generals of the UN, Antonio Guterres, the OAS, Louis Almagro, and also with the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Lady Patricia Scotland. And each of them said this to me when looking at Abaco. These are people who have been all over the world and looked at destruction from natural events like Dorian and earthquakes and the rest of it. And each one of them said this to me, and I'll never forget it. I have never seen anything like this before. The level of devastation was something almost that you could not explain unless you saw it. As Dorian approached, we did all we could to warn people to move from the coast, to come into the central Abaco. And if you listen to one of the reports given by the Prime Minister in Abaco, he even said that people should move south. We did all we could. We had buses and everything else prepared to move people from the coast. But moving someone from their home is a very difficult thing to do. There's so many physical and other connections and comfort levels that people find in their homes. So they don't want to move for various reasons. And remember, we had not had an event like this in many, many years. I heard my grandmother speak about hurricanes that caused them to move from old place down north in Abaco into places like Dundastown and Murphytown, where governments were forced to build new communities following these events. It was very difficult to get people to move. We didn't have, and we don't have a mandatory evacuation order or law for that. And even if you do, it's still difficult to get people to move. Following the event, human nature kicked in. People felt this sense of despair, and so we had unfettered looting. And if you look at the history of these events in Mississippi and the Cayman Islands and places like that, in Puerto Rico and Martinique, the French government had to send in the military at one point to restore order following the last hurricane event that they had there. You would find that this is a natural inclination of human beings to secure themselves, seeing their reality as being undone, and right now I need to look out for myself. We got a lot of help from the Caribbean. We got a lot of help from the United States, and our security forces did their best to hold the line. We're still having sporadic issues with break-ins in Abaco, which I have addressed with the Commissioner of Police, the Minister of National Security, and I'm satisfied that the Commissioner of Police has a strategic plan to make the circumstances better. But one of the challenges is that if you don't have anywhere for these people to live, that presents in itself another difficulty. So it keeps coming back to that one central point. I did peacekeeping. Adrian reminded me of my military years, and I did peacekeeping in Haiti for 6 months. I slept on a cot and in a tent without all the creature comforts that we've become accustomed to today. And so it's still a work in progress. Lessons learned. I think I would have been more forceful when I walked through the mud and the pee. just ahead of the hurricane, hours before Dorian arrived. Hours before Dorian, we were still evacuating people from Grand Key in speedboats and taking them into Grand Bahama. I don't know. It's no one I think could have prepared for what we got. A Category 5 that sat on you for 30 hours or more. When the tail of Dorian was yet in Abaco, the head of it was lashing Grand Bahama. And I remember very vividly calling Crazy Thompson in his EOC in Grand Bahama. And I said to him, brother, I don't know what you're prepared for, but you better double down on your efforts, because this monster that we're dealing with is not common to man. And you know, we had to at one point shift our EOC to a contingency EOC that we had to escape damage or injury ourselves. And so I think there are a lot of lessons to be taken away. The lessons of how do you force people to evacuate, lessons of how you pre-deploy your security forces, lessons of how you evacuate people after, because that was a chaotic scene before the government moved Bahamas Air, couldn't get on the runway because of the water. The levels of water were so high. At one point I looked at having the water pump off of the runway so we can get Bahamas Air and another airlift in there. But thank God for the benevolent spirit of Bahamians who cared so much for their brothers and sisters. The guys from Eleuthera, Spanish Wells, and they jumped on boats and mail boats and anything else that they could use to come and evacuate people. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned. I think Dorian is a case study and how you look at these events, and the Bahamas will be right there. I think at the pinnacle of how you determine what to do and what not to do.
Again, I agree with you on the case study. I really am. I think sometimes it's disheartening when people start to think that it's a miracle for the government to go in Quincy Park and to deal with these things miraculously. But you know, one of the things, and when I listen to your look back, one of the things I'm very, very careful of. The persons who are being repatriated to Abaco, and I just believe that if it's any country in the world that should have some kind of a blueprint on how to manage hurricanes, it should be the Bahamas, because we live in the hurricane belt. We have experienced this probably more than all of the countries that you mentioned. We can actually give them a blueprint. Coming out of Hurricane Dorian, let me ask you, what are the most significant changes you think the government has made? From my knowledge, I ran into a part of Abaco where the Haitians are building shanty towns all over again. Yeah. Many of the Haitians who were in the shelters here in this country, in Nassau, many who were undocumented for the most part, who were afraid to come forward because they were undocumented. Many of these places were placed in different parts of the country, and now these places are going back, building shanty towns. Even today, I flew over a whole new shanty village the other day. I'm flying very low, and I'm saying to myself, either I'm going crazy, or I need a revisitation of Dorian, because obviously the P and Elbow and Palm Road, those things were wiped away because there was a disorder, there was confusion. How then do we justify learning something from the past and allowing this stuff to happen again?
Well, Adrian, if you remember, one of the first initiatives that we had was to address irregular communities in the Bahamas. We went to court. We were stopped in court from removing these irregular communities, because we realized immediately the vulnerabilities that they presented, not only to the individuals who lived in them, but also to the surrounding communities and environment. They provide certain health risks. They provide certain security risks. They provide other social ills that we wouldn't like to see in the Bahamas. We were taken to court and stopped. And so we had three prominent communities in North Abaco that I knew of from I was a boy. All right, Abaco is a farming community. A lot of people came to Abaco to work on farms, and then there was, at one point in the late 50s, early 60s, there was Owens, Illinois, or Bale, that that did pine harvesting and then sugar cane. And so the mud, the pea, and the farm, not the farm in particular, but sandbanks just outside of Treasure Key. And then I recognized another community further past Treasure Key as you're approaching the airport. And so what you had was a displacement of those communities. The government moved very quickly to avoid any opportunity to rebuild in those communities by fencing them. We cordoned them off to prevent anybody going back in there and building. But what we found was a displacement of these communities in the farm. And in my mind, I've spoken to the Attorney General about this. The cabinet is seized of the matter. I've spoken to the Minister of Immigration, the Minister of Works. Minister of Immigration and I actually visited the place, had a drive through, and we have seen these communities springing up out of the ground like wild weed, and they will not be allowed to exist anywhere in this country, particularly in North Abaco, as long as we are able to do what we intend to do. Any homes that are built in the Bahamas. No, just let me finish. Just let me finish this point. Just let me finish this point. Any homes. Just let me finish this point. I'll let you go right now because I know this is right in your wheelhouse. I've seen you. You're a nationalist, and like most Bahamians, you find odious what is going on in Abaco. I do too, as Abaconians. I have 3 sons. They can't just go identify a piece of land and go build on it, man. All right.
Minister, I don't want you to get drawn aside. You were saying something. Finish the point.
Yeah, the point is that those homes that are irregularly built or illegally built, we are a country of laws. They are going to be removed. They are going to be removed. We will not tolerate any building of any other illegal community in Abaco. But we, as a government, you have to go through due process. You know, you can't just act involuntarily. You have to go through the right processes in order to accomplish what you intend to do. We are a country of laws. That's not going to happen in Abaco.
What I wanted to interject was that when the government went to court with Cheryl Grant Bethel, and Cheryl Grant Bethel was able to actually put a stop on the government, some kind of a moratorium, some kind of stipulation as to whether we could carry on whatever removal of shanty towns. Since then, we have a competent authority who can now move in the best interest of COVID-19. Who can now move in the best interest of
you already accused the competent authority of being a dictator. But we already accusing the competent authority now of being a dictator. So you want him to say now, as the competent authority, go break down these homes? No, the court is seized of the matter. The court is seized of the matter, and the court says this. The court says that there will be no destruction of homes, and the court also says that there will be no rebuilding of homes. All right? And so all homes built outside of that court order are illegally built. They ought not to exist in Abaco, and they're going to be removed. I believe we stand on good law by that decision.
No, what I'm saying is, in the best interest of the health of our country, knowing exactly what's actually happening from a health perspective with the coronavirus and COVID-19, I think under the emergency orders, I think this should be almost not only the perfect example, but it's almost the best opportunity to begin to take that situation into control simply because of the amount of authority is now granted in the lap of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, well, we thought as a cabinet it best to work through the normal modalities of the Ministry of Works, environmental health, and all of the other government agencies, immigration, the Attorney General's office, to place notices on most, if not all, of the buildings that they will be removed. And that's the direction we're taking now in a moment.
All right. Now, the challenge that we have, Adrian, Minister, we have 15 minutes to 5, and then we have an hour.
Can I leave you? Can I leave you after the last 15 minutes? It's Sunday and I normally cook. It's the only time that I have to spend time with my boys.
It's the only time you've ever spent with me. What do you mean? Maybe you got 15 minutes.
No, I cook for my boys on Sunday, and my wife and my granddaughter, and they're waiting on me. They're waiting until I finish my job.
Quincy, let me ask
I'll come back and talk to you anytime, Adrian. I'll come back and talk to you. All right?
Yeah, let me ask my one hard question.
Ask your hard question then.
I think in my lifetime, there's no greater challenge I've seen in my lifetime, probably in any other country, than the bodies left in the container. And I believe that is in my lifetime the most catastrophic event in my country's history.
Yeah.
Bodies left in that situation. Government officials not even showing up to bury them. The Prime Minister not showing up to the ceremony. I thought it was the most distasteful thing that ever happened in my country's history. How do you respond to that?
Well, for you to say government officials didn't show up at the burial,
I know you did. I know you showed up.
Would be wrong.
And James Albee showed up.
No, I'll tell you who all were there. I was there. Aram Lewis was there, who's the minister responsible for the new Disaster Recovery Authority and NEMA. James Albee was also there.
Yeah.
It is.
I was on the ground. He called me.
It is a very painful event. It evokes very raw emotions for me personally. Someone asked me how I felt in the moment of the burials. It was something that no one wanted to see, but we could not reconcile these bodies, these remains with their families, because we could not get the DNA matches. And there was no way, I think, that we should have kept those bodies in perpetuity, hoping that science would evolve to the place where we would get these DNA matches. We're still working assiduously to match those bodies with DNA samples taken. But from my unprofessional reading of I'm a lawyer, of these the medical documents that I've seen associated with bodies that were immersed in water, it is very difficult to find a DNA match. We have utilized, I think, even the FBI at this stage to help us with that. We've been working on it for a very long time. That's a tough one. That's a very tough one, Adrian. And it's one that evokes in each of us who've lost family members a tremendous emotion. And during Hurricane Dorian, after Dorian, people were recovering bodies and just bringing them. Wherever you found a body, police officers, security officers, and civilians were trying to just get bodies into the morgue. And I think, and all of the confusion and all of the confusion and chaos, things were done abnormally, and it's an outcome that we will not wish to see anytime, anywhere in the Bahamas again. But of course, we've seen that these things happen all over the world. Not to make an excuse, because I think we are an exceptional little country. In fact, I think we're the best little country in the world, and that's why we're held to such a strict account when things go in a way that we don't think that they ought to go.
Ooh, boy.
So here's what I've heard from you in terms of lessons learned, Minister. Tell me if I get it wrong here. So clearly, the government would have to focus on either revamping or strengthening its pre-storm communications.
No, I didn't. That's not what I meant. You know, the Prime Minister himself flew in just ahead of Dorian after making all the press statements that we made. We have to look at how we mandatorily cause Bahamians to move. I believe Dorian has partially solved that problem for us. It was a tough lesson to learn, but I myself will never fly in again ahead of a Cat 5. I would encourage everybody that I know and do my best as a member of the government to get everybody to move from that point of contact. I think we tried to communicate it, but people simply did not understand that a storm coming in on a king tide, which is a super spring tide, with a seawall of about 19 to 24 feet, where it would land and the force that it would come with, and people couldn't appreciate that. I walked through the mud and the pea myself. I was ahead of Dorian, and I said to people gathered in groups, why aren't you moving? Why don't you go down to the school? Why don't you go down to the other center that we have for you? And each one time, a man and a woman said to me, we're moving. I said, what time? They said at 6 o'clock. And obviously they didn't take seriously the warnings. I said to people, you know, graphically, I said, if you stay here, you're going to die. And the police officers who were with me speaking Creole, and we tried to convey the danger that was coming. I said, the water is going to come from that sea out there by the dock, and it's going to wash over these communities. You won't survive in here. Let's take your necessary documents. This is not a time to worry about your immigration status. You're here. you're the responsibility of the government of the Bahamas. You need to find a safe shelter. I had completed my taskings for the day, and somehow I called Chief Superintendent Mortimer, and I said, look, I feel compelled to go back into the mud. And about 5 minutes later, I called Mortimer back and said, you know what, I think we've warned enough. And Mortimer discouraged me. He said, Minister, you got to go back. So I said, why? I said, don't you think we've done? He said, yeah, but you know, it will be on your conscience if you don't go back. And we went back. We saw a reporter there from Eyewitness News who did a brief interview with us, and he asked me, you know, he said, why are you here? I said, wanting people to move or die. I don't know how else to say that. I don't know how else we can warn people. The Prime Minister gave examples of himself standing just over 6 foot and saying that this water is going to be 3 times my height. You know, you have to get out of. People in the Keys refused to move. And thank God we lost no one in the Keys. Because I think the water just came on both sides of the Keys and washed over. People, you'd hear the horror stories. Sometimes I listen to them and I cry physically. When you hear what people were forced to live through. And so we communicated as best as we could, I think.
Right, and the only point I'm making is, and it's not a criticism directed at individuals. What I'm saying is, listening to what you've said, finding a way to increase the effectiveness of that communication is critical.
It's critical. It's critical.
Right? Obviously, the lesson on evacuation, mandatory or not, has been taken to heart. The issue of security is something that was, I mean, everyone in the rest of the islands, I think, watched the looting in Abaco, specifically in Abaco, in my case, with shock, because we couldn't believe that was happening. Not only could we not believe it was happening, we couldn't believe it was being allowed to happen. And the harshest rumors were that there were members of law enforcement agencies who were either facilitating or participating in this, which was never really clarified. I'll just kind of leave that as an open question, ... But obviously the government must have learned some questions about.
Quincy, I remained in Abaco, I think, 8 days following. I was there from the 31st and I left 8 days later. No law enforcement officer that I was with participated in any looting. They can speak for themselves as it comes to that. It was difficult getting the assistance that we needed into Abaco on the ground in Abaco. And that took some time to do. We could bring things under control. But I said to another reporter the other day that I never felt a sense of despair because I saw people, I actually witnessed myself, people trying to get food and water and things that they thought that they needed in the moment to make their lives livable. And that's a natural consequence of these events. I make no excuse for it. I spent my whole life in law enforcement. And so it was rather difficult for us to watch, for me and the police and defense force to watch. But what do you do? I mean, and you rightly pointed out that this is a lesson that we've learned.
The other 2 lessons that I want to point out, obviously the housing issue. That you have to do something about housing. That's not a lesson that has been learned. I mean, it is, I put it in that column, but that is still the overriding concern, I think, for the recovery effort.
I agree with you. We have identified, as I indicated to you earlier. But what I want to say as I touch back on Adrian's touch point, anybody who's entitled to live in the Bahamas, that means you are a citizen of the Bahamas, or you are a permanent resident in the Bahamas, you have a work permit, you have an entitlement to be in the Bahamas, you can have access to housing in Abaco. We don't want to grow separate communities in Abaco. We want to grow one Bahamian community. You know, my grandfather's from Tykes Island, a place called Bottle Creek, right? But, you know, you keep that culture of Bottle Creek. We like to wear white shoes and white belts, right? You keep that culture in your house. But when you come to a country and assimilate as a part of that country, you adapt to the culture and ways of the country. We don't build irregular communities. We lived in proper communities. And so if you can afford to buy a home or to get a piece of property the right way, you have a job, you should participate in the redevelopment of housing in Abaco. That's the only way you're gonna live in Abaco. That's a determination that we have made as a government, and that's one that I intend to see through as the Member of Parliament for North Abaco.
Minister, I hear you, and I believe that. I believe that that is the standard. And about an hour, I'm about to teach the Bible, and all I'm teaching is sovereignty, how sovereignty works. The challenge that I have is, for the most part, I believe that the Haitians should keep doing exactly what they're doing, because for the most part, until somebody literally stop you from doing what you're doing, then you have a right to do what you're doing. I don't buy into all of the politics of the world.
No.
Quincy, let me make my statement. You make yours, I can make mine. You know how I go.
It's right time be the right statement, though, Adrian.
Yeah, but my thought, sincerely, Minister, is that this community has been allowed to do what they've been allowed to do because governments past and present have started back and they've kicked the can down the road.
Not present. No, not present. Not present. We moved in an unprecedented way, Adrian. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but not present. We moved in an unprecedented way to begin to eliminate shanty and unregulated communities in the Bahamas. We were taken to court and stopped.
All right. Minister, I hear you. I would like to have Adrian have unfettered access, please. Just because I think that you interrupted before he finished saying what he was saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The one question, Minister, I would really like to know is, out of the $120 million brought from the IDB, how much of that money has been used based on your knowledge for the restoration of Abaco, of the $120 million brought from the International Development Bank?
I don't have the answer to that question. I know we've spent more than $30 million on debris. I know Quincy and them at BPL are allotted some $30 million.
Quincy doesn't tell me nothing, man. Quincy,
I know that water and sewage has taken out a big chunk of that. I know that we have spent a lot of money in recovering homes, more than $4.5 million, I think, to this point. And homeowners who were set to make repairs to their homes, the damages were estimated between $5,000 for the lowest, I think it was, and $10,000 for the highest. I may be misquoting, so I'm sorry if I am. But I couldn't account for what you're talking about. I couldn't do that.
Where could we get that accounting, Minister?
Well, the DRE should have or the Minister of Finance, Peter Turnquest, who is a very astute finance minister and who often speaks to the press. So I'm sure he answered that somewhere else before.
Yeah. All right.
Peter went on a show recently and he didn't have any numbers. I was so surprised for CPA of his magnitude to go on a show without answers.
But sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a while, I suppose, to correlate these figures. And he wouldn't want to give you any. He wouldn't want to give you any erroneous information. Peter Turnquest is a very astute financial minister.
Is there going to be an audit of who's in Abaco, who's going to be repatriated in Abaco, and is there going to be a priority? Because there are no jobs available in the Bahamas right now, so there's no value. There's no value work permit. Is there going to be an effort to allow people to go back to their homeland?
Anybody who is not entitled to be in the Bahamas will be repatriated from the Bahamas. That's a commitment of this government. We only want people here. One thing we did as a part of our effort to regularize migration from Haiti. One of the things that we did was the Prime Minister led a contingent of cabinet ministers to Haiti, where we held very serious high-level discussions with them. A part of that discussion was that you would have a regulated migration in the way that my father participated in the contract and my uncle, when they went to Florida to pick citrus. Some of them even wound up in Minnesota picking apples, that you would be able to come here with your work permit given to you in Haiti. Don't come here looking for no work permit, right? We don't believe in that. We believe that when someone apply for a work permit for you, you should be in your country of origin. And then you come to the Bahamas on a regulated basis as approved by the authorities for you to be here. Of course, illegal migration from Haiti has been a perennial issue right? And so these are some of the type of initiatives that we looked at, because we feel that if you help to stand up the Haitian people at home, they would have less propensity for taking the risk that they take to cross the Windward Passage, risking their lives, and many of them die at sea. And it's quite unfortunate. But we want regulated migration to the Bahamas. I spent 15 months at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, doing a master's in security studies. And I watched seasonal pickers come into California, and I probably wouldn't be able to afford a strawberry if they didn't pick them. All right, so there's a place for migration, especially in a developing country like ours with so much potential, but we will not tolerate irregular migration. And that's something we've been working on. It's a mandate of the Minister of Immigration, who's very strong in his national views and approach, and he's not shy about how he addresses this point publicly.
I share with the Minister of Finance, I share with the Minister of Immigration. I believe the noose around the neck of the Bahamas right now is illegal immigration challenge. We've taken a pill for another country's headache. Not only that, we've been taking care of two nations in one. The Minister of Finance agrees with me that we've expended too much money on also remittances. At this stage in our country right now, millions and millions of dollars of remittances every year. These things are critical now that we are in an economic crisis. And the question really is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do in essence?
Well, it's a natural consequence. Sorry, I'm sorry.
My last question to you, Minister, because you made note of being in the cabinet, is what is the state of our economy right now? Because I mean, there are some people on the edge. NIB, according to one minister, I know you don't fall into the NIB, nor the Ministry of Finance, but Quincy smiling. But where are we critically now? Because the Prime Minister talks about PPEs, coronavirus. He talks, but he don't talk about the state.
I read a headline by the Minister of Finance the other day, and he said that we have no reason for despair in the Bahamas. I trust my colleague. I believe him. I know we are in a state where we need to be able to support Bahamians who've lost their jobs. I know that we are in a state where we need to continue to shore up our healthcare system. I know that we are in a state where we need to continue to shore up our security systems. But I think we're okay. That's my best answer to you. I think we're okay. We're going to be okay.
I'm sure you would know, Minister, being a part of the foreign affairs, that the last resort for many nations throughout the world is the IMF. And you say to me that I'm okay with an unstructured loan from the IMF for $250 million. And you said that
the other day, I don't know with the IMF. Right? I'm not going to comment on the IMF, but I'll tell you this: the other day in a virtual CARICOM meeting, we were able to achieve something that Fred Mitchell, the former minister, was fighting for. I think ministers before him was the Honorable Fred Mitchell, and I was fighting for from I came to office. Was that we don't be judged in the Bahamas by our GDP or GNP per capita. When you look at how we secure finances after events, or how we get concessional loans and lending in the Bahamas. And the other day, a letter was signed by Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State for the United States, Steve Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury, indicating that the Bahamas and Barbados will be looked upon in the same way that they look at giving concessional loans to other countries. That was a big, huge step for us, because we always say to these countries and to lending institutions all over the world, judge us on our vulnerabilities, not on our GDP, which is skewed by Life at Key, it's skewed by Old Fort Bay, it's skewed by the other place down there where they play the golf, Albany, Bakers Bay, and places like that. And so we think we're making tremendous strides in that regard. And we look forward to see what will come out of it.
Minister, I wanted to circle back. Adrian, give me 1 second. Adrian, give me 1 second. Because you asked a question that I would like to get an answer to. Is there going to be an audit of the, firstly, I assume there'll be an audit of the IDB loan, but is there going to be some kind of an audit, some kind of studied, scholarly empirical examination of the empirical data and evidence of the response?
The laws of the Bahamas always require public funding be audited. I mean, that's the law.
Right.
That's not changed.
I think it was 3.8 billion, Quincy, 4.5 billion. Do we have enough time in a year and a half to audit all that money? Minister, I gave an analogy the other day. I sent somebody to the food store with $20 to buy 4 canned Coke sodas. The Coke sodas cost $1 each.
Wow.
All the people seem to be asking is, where's our change and where's the receipt?
You remember, Adrian, I'm sure as I do that, you could buy them one time for 25 cents. You remember that?
Yeah. All we want to know right now is where's the receipt and where's the change? 3.8 billion words.
That's a bona fide question to ask.
So
where's the receipt? Where's our money? Where's the 3.8 billion words? Where's the access to the 60 million increase in back?
The next time that we have KPT on the dock, Adrian, I think those.
I can't keep you put on a lot of weight. I saw him on the WhatsApp the other day. He put on a lot of weight. He must be living really good.
We'll see. We'll see the next time we talk to him.
I'll talk to KPT. I'm going to call him right now to ask him why he putting on so much weight.
What a mercy.
Now, you a bit cheeky yourself, man.
Yeah. You know, I can't get on the treadmill as much as I used to, right? But
I gotta give you a call this week.
My granddaughter told me the other day, Papa, you putting on some weight. You got to get back on that treadmill.
Yeah, you're a bit cheeky. Yeah. You're living good.
Yeah. You think that's what it is? Sometimes people say stress causes you to eat a lot.
No, man, they say when politicians start to look cheeky, you gotta be really careful.
Sometimes it's stress eating, man. Stress eating.
Let me turn the question to COVID for 2 minutes before the minister has to go.
Okay.
2 things: the complications for the recovery effort in Abaco that have come from the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there a concern for, or an overriding concern, especially given what happened in Acklands and Crooked Island? Is there a real concern about inter-island transmission, and how is COVID-19 affecting recovery in Grand Bahama? I'm sorry.
I think you recognize, Quincy and Adrian, as the rest of the country does, that we took an approach to COVID, a stance of mitigation, because we understand that we were challenged with capacity in our healthcare services in the islands in particular, to really manage against a COVID onslaught. And so we took every step possible to mitigate the spread of COVID in our islands. That failed. One thing led to another, and now we have basically every island touched by COVID. Just the other day, Commonwealth Bank branch in Marsh Harbor, which was open and servicing the community, had a touch, and they had to close for healthcare reasons. And so whenever things like that happen, it hampers your progression. And so COVID is quite a challenge for us. We continue to do our best to mitigate the spread of COVID. We continue to ask our people to keep your social distancing, wear your face covering, and behave responsibly, because we're all in this together. And we're going to come through this only if we come through it being our brother's keepers and looking out for each other. Be careful of your circles. You don't know where everybody else goes, but you know where you go and those who are in your small circle. And so COVID is obviously a challenge for us in the recovery efforts.
There's conversation that you're no longer going to run an Abaco. I would like for you to be able to actually say it here on this show that you may not be running.
As far as I'm aware,
I understand that you were taking a binoculars look at Michael. Is there any truth to that?
Well, that's nonsense. I've never heard anything like that. I was born and raised in Abaco. My navel string is buried in Abaco. As long as I'm in politics, and the Free National Movement will have me as their candidate, I'm going to be in North Abaco. So you plan on going back to North Abaco? Absolutely, unequivocally. Absolutely, one more time. Absolutely, unequivocally. Unless the Free National Movement has any other notions, I see no other future for me but being the representative in North Abaco to bring my people to where I think they ought to be. With all that has gone on, that you can represent Abaco, North Abaco again? Albaconians are a very astute populace and constituency. They understand that some things happened that we had absolutely no control over, like Dorian and like COVID. I said to someone this morning, you know, ahead of COVID and Dorian, we held regular town meetings in Abaco. We had opportunities where we attended every function in Abaco, spoke at commencement services in Abaco, because I wanted to encourage young Abaconians to believe that if a little boy from Dundas Town on Block 30 could aspire to become one day the foreign minister of the Bahamas, if a little boy from Cooperstown, the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram, could aspire to become Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, that there is no limits on them, that they can aspire to become and do and be anything they would wish to become in the world. And we wanted to be this example for them. And so we still think we have a lot more to offer. We know we have a lot more work to do. And so we will commend ourselves to the people of North Abaco to be judged on that day.
All right, so we got to politics a little quicker than I expected. That was kind of a
you know, can get that out. You know, I had to get that up because all the noise on the ground in Abaco. I have to confront Darren Henfield before you go down there. If you get a couple of change in your pocket, I may have to save him that change.
I was just down in Abaco on Tuesday, man, at the church service where we had a wonderful memorial service. I in fact was encouraged. I was in fact encouraged by the strength and the resilience of my people. I'm proud to be Abaconian. I'm proud to be their servant in the House of Assembly.
One of the questions Adrian, this is something that I talked about.
You said you got to go try and find the money. That's what you said. You got to go try and find the money. I heard your sermon. I said, if I give you 120 million for the ICP, you don't have to go find it. You should know where it is.
So one of the things that Adrian and I talked about on the show is why people pursue what they pursue. One of I heard what you said just now about yourself and about the Honorable, the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram. And my question is, why are you in politics? What is it that you hope to achieve specifically through representation of the people in North Abaco?
It's a very good question. One of the reasons why I came to politics is because I thought I could help. I thought that we could do some things to make a difference in the way that our country was going. I thought that we could really change the paradigm of what we once saw in the Bahamas, where those who had always keep getting, and those who don't have didn't have opportunities to get something. There are a lot of opportunities in this country for Bahamians, and I think we should all be able to participate in those opportunities. That's one of the reasons why I came to politics. One of the other reasons why I came to politics is because I felt that people in Abaco needed good and positive representation. I thought I brought that. I think I still bring that. I have a vested interest in Abaco. It's where I was born, it's where I grew up, it's where my family is today. And so there are so many things that we wanted to do. But you know, when you come to politics, it's difficult to do all the things that you would like to do because you are a member of a government. You know, you are a member of a government with many competing interests, and you can only do what you can. Fight for your people. You know, in the cabinet, I said to them the other day in the church service, I said, when the name Abaco is called, everybody looks at Darren Henfield because they know the passion in which I fight for my island and for my people. And that's something I'm not ashamed of. And that's something I'll always do as long as I am there. And so I'd like to see us be able to stand up some young Bahamians and cause them to be successful at whatever endeavor that they choose to get into. I'd like for us to be able to take vocational education like BTVI and bring it to the islands where we can teach young men who don't want to be rocket scientists or lawyers and doctors and reporters like you all to do drywall and plumbing and masonry and carpentry. One of the reasons why we have so many illegal migrants in Abaco and illegal migrant issues is because we don't have the capacity to do the work. And I think BTVI and institutions like that would be able to empower so many more of our young people to be able to participate in the development of our island and in our country. And so I came to politics to make a positive difference. But you know, I've heard it said before, loose goat know how tie goat feel, right? It's governing is not as simple as it appears from the outside looking in. And when I say that to my colleagues opposite, they look at me and they smile, you know, because looking on from the outside, you think that you have all the answers. You think that you can just go right in and it's a cakewalk to getting where you want to be. But in reality, it's not that way. And you have things that intervene like Mother Nature. With Dorian, you have things that intervene like COVID. And you have other challenges that you have to face and deal with.
You know, when a loose coat don't know how tie coat feels. Darren Henfield, you made a comment on the floor of the House of Assembly. You know, you could have been a loose coat if things wasn't going the direction you needed to go, and you could have been a loose coat because you said the first banana of the boat is the first one to get peeled.
Well, you know that statement, man. That's a whole behemoth. That's a whole behemoth statement,
speaking
man.
Directly to one or two guys who were a little rough on the edges.
No, man, that's a whole behemoth statement, man. You never heard that one before? First banana leave a bunch get skin.
All I'm saying is you play your politics very well. And you know, I tell you, they put you in the best. They put you in the best portfolio. They put you in foreign affairs because now you're able to actually speak foreign languages, even when you're talking to your colleagues. You're very good. You're a very good politician. And I think you go under the disguise of those. Let me tell you, what do you think the temperature is on the outside when it comes to this administration and its performance?
I think politics in the Bahamas is very divisive. You're going to have, in this country, you have 40% of the population that supports the PLP, 40% that supports the FNM, I say that loosely. And then you have this 20% that what you can call a swing voter or an independent person who looks at things objectively. I think at the end of the day, the Bahamian people will judge us on what we've been able to accomplish. Before we had Dorian, we were doing a lot of work reducing the deficit. We've been able to manage. We forget that we had another hurricane that wreaked havoc in Ragged Island, and that, I think that happened in September of 2017, and parts of Grand Bahama and Bimini. We faced many challenges as a government. I don't think any government in the history of this country has faced legitimately the challenges that we have encountered in the past just over 3 years in governing. We don't make any excuses about it. We strap up our boots every day and we go to work, and we work as hard as we can in the interest on behalf of the Bahamian people. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And the Bahamian people will judge us at the end of the day on the work that we do. May the work we do speak for us.
You sound like a preacher again. What is the one significant thing you think you guys have accomplished in your 3.5 years? The one home run that you guys have hit.
We have been able to reduce the deficit. That had not been seen in recent years in this country. We had the unemployment figures receding. We were doing quite well, I think, in that regard before we hit these speed bumps in the road. We intend to build some more schools. One in Inagua. Treasure Key needs a school. Grand Bahama needs a hospital. This ain't over yet. We still got several more months in office.
What you intend to do? What is the one home run you've hit? What is the one great accomplishment you've had in 3.5?
We have managed to keep the economy of the Bahamas and the Bahamian people stable, despite the challenges that we have seen. To me, that is a home run.
Okay.
The question that I have, after listening to your response to Adrian's question, you were very pragmatic. So let me ask it directly. I don't know if Adrian was gonna get back to this. Do you think the Minister administration is gonna win in 2022?
Absolutely.
By how much?
Absolutely. It will be foolhardy for me to put an estimate on that, but absolutely, we will win the government of the Bahamas. The Bahamian people will judge us on the work that we have done, on the challenges that we have faced, and on the platform that we will bring to them when the time is right to do so. Absolutely.
There was a question that was asked to me about the poaching and immigration situation. I believe some Dominican fishermen were released recently. Without punishment is the way that it was described. I want to put to you, number one, an opportunity to explain that moment, and number two, that there is a serious struggle going on, as you would know, as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, between the Bahamas and Haiti and the Dominican Republic regarding fishing rights, regarding marine economic exclusive zones, regarding where it is that our fishing grounds stop and their fishing grounds begin.
International law is very clear on the boundaries of
the
Bahamas,
law on the paper,
right?
is wonderfully clear.
It's very clear. It's very clear. We have an economic zone that stretches 200 nautical miles from the baseline of our archipelago.
Yes,
that is in circumference, right?
That is paper. I'm asking specifically though about the continued incursions.
We have done several things since coming to office to address this very vexing problem of poaching in the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. A constant cause of consternation to our fishermen and our fishing community. And this government and this administration, you have seen the exponential increase of fines and imprisonment to poachers that you've never seen before in the history of this country. We are currently engaged with TCI. I was in the Turks and Caicos a year and a half ago or so, where we hope to engage them in a comprehensive maritime agreement, which will allow us to patrol within their waters as a symbiotic relationship, as what happens now with us in the United States Coast Guard, where they are able to put their surface vessels in Bahamian territorial waters to help us to police our maritime space with a Defense Force officer on board. We are in the process of finalizing that memorandum of understanding with the Turks and Caicos, where we can do the same thing and extend our reach into the southern quadrants of our region, from where we have most of our challenges emanating. When we sign that, it means that when we patrol in that area, it extends our reach toward Hispaniola or Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which gives us a more of a presence in that area, and which also helps the Turks and Caicos with their challenges as it relates to poaching and illegal immigration as well. And so these are some of the things, some of the initiatives that we are working on. We have a better relationship with Cuba. Since coming to office, I realized that in the agreement that we have with Cuba, there's an article in there which says that we should protect each other's resources, maritime resources. And so the first occasion I asked the Cuban foreign minister, what are you going to do to live up to your end of the agreement? And he was kind of looking at me kind of starry-eyed. And I said, well, Dominican poachers come into our waters and they drop off their dinghies to fish, and they drift over the median line. And then when they're pursued by our officers, by our law enforcement, they run into Cuba. And for the first time in the history of this country, we were able to have turned over from the Cuban government Dominican fishers that ran into Cuba to avoid being apprehended or arrested by our Royal Bahamas Defense Force. And that was a very proud moment for me. It went by very quietly, but I thought that was a huge step in our fight against illegal fishing in the Bahamas. And so we continue to look at these initiatives. I have Captain Godfrey Roll in my office, who we've hired as a person to look at operations for these kind of events, to look at how we continue to negotiate our maritime boundaries. We have negotiations ongoing with the United States, where we share boundaries to the north. We have negotiations going on with the TCI, the UK, so we can determine our boundaries, which is so very important.
Minister, I would encourage you when the next person asks you about home runs. In my view, any progress on poaching is a home run. I remember.
Thank you.
I remember.
I didn't want to sound, as we say in the human vernacular, bigoted, right?
So you have to.
But I think we have worked very hard as an administration You know, people don't understand. We meet sometimes on Saturdays and Sundays. We meet 9-hour, 10-hour days, trying to deal and grapple with the problems of this that we face in the Bahamas as a developing nation. I'm so very proud to have been chosen to serve alongside these very professional, very dedicated nationalists that I see sitting next to me as colleagues in the cabinet. I commend the Prime Minister for his strength, for his tenacity. He's carried a heavy burden in the last 3 years. And so I ask those who are listening who know how to pray to continue to pray for his strength, as you continue to pray for the strength of the leader of the opposition. A strong opposition makes a strong government. And we have quite a legacy of democracy in this country.
Minister, we are winding down. We have 3 minutes left. The question that comes to my mind, all politicians may not necessarily fall into this category, but if you're going to get in the game, you might as well be in the game to win. Mm-hmm. And winning politics in this analogy means leading a political party and becoming a prime minister. Mm-hmm. And so I want to ask you about your prime ministerial ambition.
I have no designs on becoming the prime minister of the Bahamas. I asked the prime minister every day, how do you make it? How do you do it? We have a leader. We have a very competent, very capable, very qualified prime minister who in my mind is doing a tremendous job. That's a question for a later date, somewhere way, way down the road.
I laugh at questions like that, right? Because for the most part, I watched the Boston Celtics lose a game the other day to Toronto Raptors. And normally, for the most part, people who are given the responsibility, like the competent authority or the prime minister of our country, they say people only do well but they do best, and they only do best when they do well. And when you get to that which you do naturally, it doesn't become a burden. But do you believe at the end of the day that you guys are in a situation where you laid some foundations that you can't build on now? Because there are so many questions of transparency. There are so many questions about clairvoyancy. Are you comfortable that you guys would have done all that you could do rightly in the eyes of the Bahamian public?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We have not been perfect in our administration of the country, but we have done our best. Some things you approach and you hit the home run, the proverbial home run, and some things you ground out. But we continue to fight the good fight. We had a lot of foreign direct investment in the pipeline that COVID came in and put somewhat of a damper on. For instance, in South Abaco.
You mean like Oban?
What are you talking about, Oban? We never entered into an agreement with Oban.
No.
When was that? When did we enter an agreement with Oban?
We don't have time.
Oh.
Adrian, no, I'm about to say, Adrian, we only have a minute left. We got time.
We don't have time.
Yeah, you know, so there's a $350 million project set for South Abaco. There's another one in Central Abaco, quite a bit of money. There's South Lutra and Disney.
Let me ask you. Let me interrupt for just 1 second.
Okay.
Back when Vincent Peake was the Minister of Financial Services, he served as they had the pipeline that they used to talk about, right? $1 billion in the pipeline.
Yeah.
When they lost office, I got a copy of the list that goes before the National Economic Council that shows what's in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say where I got that list from, but I got the list. And nothing on that list, this is now 15 years later, I think, nothing on that list came to pass.
Yeah.
So I would advise
I take your advice. I take kindly your advice, but you know, we signed an agreement with the Port of Nassau that we anticipate will redevelop the downtown area with Global Ports. We signed some agreements in Grand Bahama with cruise industries that we thought would be able to revitalize the economy of Grand Bahama. And so you have to speak to those things that you have signed and that you anticipate will come, whilst continuing to work on the other rail to make some other things happen.
Yeah, one of them was a $500 million medical tourism resort. They were going to build a plastic surgery center and have people recover in the Bahamas for 3 weeks in a new
I can tell you, Quincy, as a minister of government, you hear some things, some innovations that you only chuckle, you chuckle. You say, well,
I don't have a problem with
medical
tourism.
that,
I think medical tourism is a thing. I'm just saying, I think that we as a society, we have heard enough about the pipeline. Yeah. As a community, we don't hear about the pipeline no more, because the pipeline.
Yeah, I accept that. I accept that.
Quincy built a pipeline that never came out of it.
Exactly.
And these guys, they're inheriting the pipeline syndrome, and now you're trying to sell me a dream. If you didn't have 5 years, I don't hear no more about COVID. I don't hear no more about
we're elected to serve this country for 5 years. Right now we're in 3 years and a couple of months. And so it's not over yet.
Adrian, that's where we gotta leave it.
All I see is strike out.
We are.
What do you say? What do you say?
We are out of time, folks. We are out of time.
Take care. Thanks very much, Quincy. Thanks, Adrian. It's always good. Yeah, man. Anytime. It's always good talking to you. Take care.
Always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Minister.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll see you next.
All right.
And thank you very much for joining us, folks, on the Political Review. We'll see you next week, and God bless you until then.
God bless you all.